Welcome to Brave with Lisa YouTube channel. My name is Lisa Bruton and my goal is to inspire you to live bravely in that unique rhythm of grace that God has designed just for you. On this channel, we are going to be hearing from amazing people from all different walks of life who are bravely walking in that unique rhythm of grace and calling that God has designed just for them. I know that as we hear their stories, we are going to learn a lot. We're going to find keys that are going to help us to also walk bravely in that unique rhythm of grace and that unique calling that God has just for you and for me. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to Brave with Lisa YouTube channel. My name is Lisa Bruton and today I have the gorgeous Bronwen Healy with me. Bronwen is a mum to three gorgeous grown daughters. She's an author, a speaker, a pioneer. And what I really love about Bronwen is that there's no pretense about her. She's very honest, very authentic, and loves so well. I love also that she says this about herself, that she is in the process of healing her way to wholeness and learning the art of rest and being kind and gentle with oneself. That's a very powerful statement and a very different statement to say about yourself. So welcome, Bronwen.
Thank you for having me, beautiful lady.
It's so great to have you. Bronwen, can you tell us a little bit about, or as much as you want, about your world at the moment and what you're passionate about and just how your life looks?
So my life at the moment is way different to what it has been for the last 15 years or 22 since I went to drug rehab and became a Christian. It is currently working casual retail, and my kids think it's hilarious because I don't even love shopping. But my boss is my friend, and she's like, you might not like shopping, but you are great with people. So I find that working casual retail is a great opportunity to practice the prophetic in everyday life. Like, no customer that comes into the store knows that I'm like, Lord, you're going to have to help me. Like, what do they want and what do they need? And knowing that he knows everybody better than they know themselves and what they want and need. So there's that. And then I raised three of the world's most incredible young women, grown, like you said, grown young women. So the youngest is just started grade 12 subjects. So she'll graduate end of next year. The middle one is studying education arts at university. And the eldest one is an interior design decorator. I have done a lot of speaking over the last 18, 19 years, really, since my first book, Trophy of Grace, came out. And I've done a lot of writing over the years. And I'm in a season after being the founder and the CEO of a charity for 14 years. I had a car accident 2 years ago and have ended up with a couple of bulging discs in my neck that I'm believing for miraculous healing from every day. But in the midst of healing my way to wholeness, I'm learning so much about food and inflammation and being kind to myself and breathing and being still. And when I talk about learning the art of rest, like it takes practice. And for someone who has been a doer and a dreamer and a big wild lover of life and people for such a long time, learning to love me in a way that is life-giving. I think it's made me a better mum, a better friend, a better human, ultimately, a better daughter. And I think that in the midst of all of this season of, I had the car accident 2 years ago and decided to resign from the charity that I'd founded and the social enterprise cafe that we ran that had 18 staff and was helping women that wanted life change from addictions in the sex industry find absolute freedom. And when I resigned, it was massive. It was like letting go of a baby and entrusting it into the hands of others. And what I realized in that time and preparing for my chat with you today was ultimately I chose me. And when you are an empath and a giver and a lover of people and life and a dreamer and a doer and a community builder, choosing you can be really hard. One of the best decisions I ever made and one of the hardest. And I'm a writer, so I've been writing again. A lot about the journey has been brutal, but it's also been really beautiful. and finding a part of me in him, and finding a depth in him that I thought I knew before, but learning it in a new way and in new dimensions, and learning new dimensions of him and the kingdom and my love walk with him. Learning to embrace the wilderness has been huge. So that's where I am.
I call that a very brave stepping out of something that you have poured yourself into. Like, I know you poured into the charity and the LoveWell Project, and to then go, wow, I actually need to step out and let go of it in order to look after myself, because God hasn't made us to be workhorses, has he? He's made us to be alive and to flourish. But that would be such a big decision and a big step. What was the transition like initially? Was there doubt as you stepped out?
It was huge. One of the questions, or the two questions that I ask, when I used to come alongside a lot of people and do a lot of mentoring, and at the moment I'm mentoring myself with the Holy Spirit. The two questions that I ask is, what are you doing someone else could be doing? And what are you not doing that only you can do? Right?
Yeah.
So only I can rest and heal my way to wholeness. No one else can do that for me. No amazing podcast, no amazing book, no amazing author, no amazing person praying for me can heal my way to wholeness for me, right? No one else can be the mom of these 3 incredible daughters that I've almost solo parented their entire lives. And no one else can do this journey for me. They can do it with me. They can do it alongside me. They can believe for me. They can believe with me. But no one else can do this journey for me. And so when I ask those questions, what am I doing someone else could be doing? What am I not doing only I can do? Only I can rest and heal my way to wholeness. And somebody else can run the charity. Somebody else can run the social enterprise cafe. Nobody else can write these books that are in me. No one else can start the pioneer things that he's put in my spirit that are starting to brew in new ways, which is exciting, from a place of rest.
Yeah.
But no one else can do that.
Yeah.
And so the challenge, especially for people in ministry a lot, and or small businesses that are growing, when we ask, and they're our dreams and they're our babies. So we have to trust, and you've got to let go of things, and you've got to, hold on. You've got to ask ourselves, what am I to hold on to and what am I to let go of? And ultimately it brings out a new level, if we'll let it, of trusting in the Lord with all of our heart and leaning not on our own understanding, believing that ultimately he knows us better than we know ourselves. Mm-hmm. And instead of saying, God, I'm asking you to bless my dreams, we're saying, God, what are your dreams for me? Because I want to partner with the purposes of heaven, not just get you to bless what I think it would be a cool thing. And so for me, when I made that decision, it was huge. The transition was hard. Yeah. It was brutal. It was around when I met you. Yeah. And it was like, I was heartbroken. Like, there was a lot going on that, may or may not ever one day be spoken about. It was brutal. And I had just come out of a second divorce in my young lifetime, and my heart was broken. My spirit felt crushed, and I was dealing with physical injury. And so the couch and I became really close friends. My dog was a constant companion. And in the midst of all of that, I realized, in Luke 4, the Holy Spirit led Jesus to the desert. And I read all the translations that I could on the planet to realize that the Holy Spirit didn't cause my car accident, but I knew that the Lord was going to use it for his good. Yeah. Right. And so if the Holy Spirit led Jesus to the desert, and in that space, Jesus was protected, he was provided for. And really in that desert season, it was like, not only was he fed, not fed because he was fasting, he was nurtured and he was protected and he was provided for. In that space, he discovered his voice in a new way, and he learned a new level of his identity. And when you know your true identity, you'll take your rightful authority. And so I didn't realize that here I am nearly over 2 years later. And, you know, like when you first take a rest from ministry and you're like, oh, you know, I'm believing God for a miracle with these 2 bulging discs. Oh, maybe it'll be 2 months or 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. And now it's been over 2 years. But there's no like me trying to peep through the window to find out what's next, or, you know, like God's not in a hurry.
Yes.
He's not in a hurry, and he's never in a hurry. And the things that I'm learning about me, that I just caught up with one of my most beautiful long-term friends this morning, and she just looked at me and she said, you're the truest version of yourself you've ever been.
Wow.
And the other versions and the other translations weren't untrue, but more connected to me, more at peace, more entwined with his presence. And so the brutality has become beautiful. You know, he makes beautiful things out of the ashes, you know. And I found that the conversations that I have had with him in the ruins and in the rubble have been some of the most powerful conversations with him I've ever had. And I'm forever changed. Forever changed. Yeah.
And that's so encouraging, I think, for anyone who's listening, who is in the wilderness as well. And to know that that Jesus doesn't rush. That's actually something that God spoke to me in my dream a couple of weeks ago. And it just repeated over and over, Jesus doesn't rush, Jesus doesn't rush, Jesus doesn't rush. And it's just helped me to even slow down and just not feel this pressure to achieve or to, you know, conquer, because it's in his timing and it's in his rest, and he doesn't rush us at all. And so for those who are in the wilderness or in a tough place, Jesus isn't rushing you to do or achieve anything other than be entwined with him.
Yeah. And he's, you know, the cry of his heart is linger longer. You know, like he's like not, you know, it's like we hear all the songs and we listen to all the worship, you know, I'm not in a hurry, and, you know, don't rush out of my presence. Like, where are you going? Like, I'm everywhere is the first thing. But when we learn the art of stillness, you know, and Graham Cook has incredible teachings on, you know, rest is a weapon. You know, it's like he wants us to learn the art of being overdoing. He wants us to linger longer. He doesn't want us to be in a hurry to move on to the next thing. Like in the last 2 years, because I was, you know, a public figure and all of this, you know, jazzy stuff for a long time, 15 years. And the amount of people, especially in the first 6 months, and in the first, like, I still have the 2 bulging discs in my neck, and people see me now and they're like, you look so well. Like when you're on a wellness journey and you're learning about anti-inflammatory foods and breathing and laying on a Shakti mat and essential oils and using amazing organic skincare, you've got to hope that you look better, right? But it's like I'm still I'm holding, or I'm living with chronic pain, believing for a miracle every day. And yet ultimately the lessons that I'm learning in this process are changing me, which I know he will use to help other people over the you know, the amount of people in that first 6 months, because I looked like I was in physical pain and I just come through a divorce. So people knew, and I was carrying a lot of weight and I was very sad and I was depressed and I was heartbroken, and it was, and people would say, are you okay? And, you know, I was kind of like, no. And that was okay to not be okay. And then as time goes on, people think that you just like you've snapped back, or you should be better, or, you know, it's like with grief, the grief journey at the moment. My mum passed away earlier this year, and, you know, people are like, are you okay? Like, are you like, not are you over it, but are you okay? I'm like, I'm okay-ish.
Yeah.
You know, and that's okay. And ultimately, the only thing I know is that he's close and that I'm held, and that's the only constant. And so people in that first 6 months would, little spider thought it would join my conversation. Unwelcome visitor. In that first 6 months, people would say, what are you doing now? What are you doing next? What's next? And I felt like there was this weird pressure on me to be like, okay, God, what's next? Like in this season where, you know, that first 12 months of literally living by faith. And if he didn't pay my rent, we would be homeless. And if people didn't send me grocery vouchers and mystery packages of food, we would have starved. And there was this weird pressure to be like, okay, God. And I knew it wasn't from him.
Yeah.
He's not a pressurizing God. He's not in a hurry. And I don't have to do for him. I need to be with him.
Yeah.
And so I let go of that pressure of other people's expectations or my own expectations. And in that time, you know, I had the time. I could have written 3 or 4 books.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that they're not in me.
Yeah.
But I couldn't. And so now it's been 2 years. And there's moments of times where I'm like, okay, what's next? You know, there's books in me and there's stories in me and there's, you know, tales to be told, conversations from the ruins to be had. And ultimately it's day by day and moment by moment, and who knows, but he knows. Yeah.
So what does it look like? Because you said you let go of the expectations that other people had on you and even expectations of yourself. What does that look like? How did you do that?
I had to just be okay with being me. So I remember when I decided to resign from the Hope Foundation, and I remember going to visit my mum in aged care, and my eldest daughter came with me. She's like, this is a big conversation. And I remember sitting in that room, and I said to her, okay, I need to let you know, big news, you know, and I'd just come through divorce and I just had the car accident. So my mum would have been like, what big news now? Like what now? And I said, I've decided to resign from the Hope Foundation. And she looked at me and she said, you are the Hope Foundation. And I said, I know. She said, then what are you going to do? Like, meanwhile, I'm like nursing chronic pain and a broken heart and betrayal. And there was so much going on. I was like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to do, Mum, I'm going to be.
Yeah.
And when I said it out loud, it was this, and 2 years later, I've gotten better at it. After 15 years of doing with him, don't get me wrong, but doing and showing up and being present. And she was like, I remember the look on her face, and I said, I'm going to be a daughter of the King and find out what that truly means in a new way, which I am. And I'm going to be your daughter, and I'm going to be the girl's mum. And I'm just going to be, I trust and I hope I'm going to be a better friend, and I'm going to be more present. There won't be any distractions. It's just him and I. And she was like, okay, you know, okay. And I think in her mind, like, she always carried around my Hope Foundation business cards and was so proud of me, and, you know, using my past of drug addiction and prostitution, becoming a Christian for good.
Yeah.
That she used to hand out my business cards and my books when they were in print to every person that she saw. And I ultimately was just like, Mum, if I was to have a business card now, it would just say freelancer for the Holy Spirit. Like, I go by the wind of the Spirit, and, you know, it's what I did before, but it's now in a different freestyle way. And she was like, okay. But I thought, you know, when you say that out loud, when, you know, it's like we hear it, we sing about it, we read books about, you know, present over perfect. And it's learning to put it into practice. And when I say I'm learning to be kinder to myself than ever before, this latest season with this deep, fresh grief of losing my mom has been, I'm learning to be more gentle with myself and not in a hurry. And yeah, I have dreams and visions and books and stories and podcasts and YouTube videos, and who knows what's going to come.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I'm only 46. So I have a lifetime ahead of me to partner with the purposes of heaven and walk in step. And, you know, when you talk about the unforced rhythms of grace, you know, it's like they're unforced. They're rhythms. It's like we find, you know, I'm not good at music, but you find a beat, you find a rhythm, and it takes practice to create new, healthy, holy patterns. And I think the whole world needs to learn to be more kind and gentle with themselves. Yeah.
And did you find, I've got so many questions for you. um, so I guess let's go to the relationships changes that probably happened when you changed, like, not that you changed who you were, but the decisions that you made from, being CEO to then just being. And you would have had to put pretty strong boundaries and different boundaries around yourself. How did that go with the relationships around you? There must have been a bit of a reshuffling.
It's been huge. It's been huge. I think I wrote about it the other day. It's like my circle's gotten very small. The caliber of people in that circle is mind-blowing. And the caliber of people along the narrow road always will be. Everybody's welcome to this narrow road. Not everybody chooses to take it. Hind's Feet on High Places is one of my all-time absolute favorite books. I brought it with me to retreat last year, a devotional version that my friend had sent me from America. And not everybody gets it. Not everybody will embrace your journey. Not everybody will embrace your changes. Not everybody will understand. But when you don't understand it yourself, right? Then what we need as humans when we're making big changes and transitions is grace, and understanding. And I didn't get that from some of the people that I had journeyed really closely with for a long time, that I'd imagine that I would have got it from. Relationships have shifted and changed in a way. Some of them have hurt. Some of the losses or the misunderstandings have hurt. A whole nother level of loss and grief. When you go from being a community leader to not just the community of women at Hope Foundation, but in the community, you have to wrestle with who am I now? Ultimately, that has been, and again, you've gone from freshly divorced again to having had an accident to learning to live with chronic pain to a solo mom, like all these titles, that the world puts on me. And now it really is, it's like, hey, I'm Bronwen. People walk past me at the retail store and they're like, aren't you Bronwen Healy? And I'm like, that depends. Why? Oh, you prayed for me at a conference 10 years ago and it changed my life. Or I read your book, or and it's like, wow, it's so cool. They're like, and they look and they're like, what are you doing here? It's like, I'm for now right where he needs me to be. And I am learning, again, the prophetic gift inside of me for every customer, whether they know it or not. The friendship part, when I think about how tiny my circle is and the caliber of people, I watched a movie about a month ago called Love is Love is Love. And one of the short story films in that, there was a woman who had passed away and her daughter gathered 9 or 10 of her closest friends who didn't all know each other. And I wept my way through that short story. And I got home and I sat with Holy Spirit and wrote a list of the people that I would want my daughters to invite to that table. And I thought, not that you want to think about passing away and your friends all gathering around the table to talk about how amazing you are or what impact you had on their life. But what an amazing exercise that was for me. And there was people whose names I would have loved to put on there, that I felt like in this season, for whatever reason, they're not there. And ultimately, he's the head of the table, right? Yeah. But it was huge. And when you realize the caliber of the people in that circle, there's a different level of peace and comfort that you can just be okay with. But it was, a powerful and confronting exercise to do. I messaged one of my friends and said, hey, I just saw this movie and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. Yeah. So, huge.
And it's those friendships, isn't it, that the key ones are the ones that allow you to be messy, but allow you to shine as well. And they don't try to, they don't keep you in a place of how they knew you. They allow you to grow and they just love you as you are. And it sounds like they're incredible people with a lot of grace, and they're very lucky to have you in their lives too.
Your friend.
We're speaking about, we've mentioned a few times, that rhythm of rest, being in rest. Can you identify when you're not in rest and when you are in rest?
Yes, my body and my pain levels let me know.
Oh.
Unfortunately, sometimes quicker than I can recognize. And again, for me, I guess some of it's retail is, it's my job and it helps put food on the table for now. It can be brutal on my body. And so having to make sure that I don't work on certain days of the week, that I don't work too long hours, that I don't lift and move heavy things. I can tell when my mind is out of rest because I get really short-tempered, mostly with the people that are closest to me. I get messier. Like I work better with an uncluttered space, and so my mind gets, it's like I can tell when I walk in and I'm like, oh, hold on a second, the kitchen bench just needs an absolute rehash. Like this is, and I can tell when, again, with grief, it's hard because before losing my mom, like I would cry. And I could tell from my emotions that I was a bit out of balance, that I wasn't in rest, that I wasn't working from a place of rest, or that I wasn't living from a place of rest. I should say not working. Learning to pause, especially again, as someone who for a long time lived at such a huge capacity. It's like when you're a world changer, you live at world changing capacity. And so having to acknowledge my changing capacity physically, mentally, emotionally, and then spiritually, to be in this place that is the sweetest place I've ever been with him. I know that if I partner with him, he's going to whisper, he's going to be like, oi. And it's trusting God. It's like, I'm a casual retail worker. So if I'm going to need to take time off, that I've got to trust that he's going to provide, as single parent with 3 kids and a roof over our heads and food on our table. It's really learning to trust him, and lean into the whispers. Believe that when he says pause, that I do. When he says go, that I do. And ultimately, again, in that being kind and more gentle with myself, I learn the prompts. I've gotten better at listening to the prompts so that I don't get exhausted, because that's not a healthy place for me to function from. It never was, but I pushed through anyway, and now I just don't. I can't. Yeah.
That's so healthy as well. I know from like my time in the wilderness, like I think we've all spent time in the wilderness and at different stages of our lives, but I always find that through those hard times, God gives us these sweet encouragements, these sweet moments. Can you share any of those that have happened in the last 2 years for you?
There's been so many, like even, thinking about the time from July when mum passed, or just again, though, they're whispers from heaven. And it'll be him letting me know that he's seen me. And often through humans, bumping into someone at a coffee shop who says, I just want you to know that I think you're an incredible mum, when you feel like you're not, and you've had the most dreadful conversation with one of your children. And it's like where he's like, I see you. And the way that heaven sees is, I fully see you. I truly know you, and I deeply love you. And so the last 2 years of this wilderness season has been where it's almost like the whisper of heaven is, I love you to the desert and back. And he's reminding me there's an and back. It's like I said to a friend the other day, I feel like I'm clinging. It's almost like I've in this lesson of embracing the wilderness and the hiddenness of the secret place and the secrecy of this place with him. And I'm a writer, so it's all been journaled. Some of it will become public one day, you know, but in this season of hiddenness in the wilderness and embrace, you know, I struggled to embrace the wilderness season. It took a lot of wrestle. And then when I did, and now I'm a bit like, do I have to come out? do I have to come out? Do I ever have to? And I don't. And if I chose not to, he doesn't love me anymore or any less because of what I do for him.
Yeah.
Right. His love is unconditional. But there's something in me that's like, I know that I'm learning these lessons in the wilderness, these lessons from the desert, these embracing this wilderness season for a reason. And when he whispered, I love you to the desert and back, it was like, oh, there's an and back. There's an and back. Okay. And, you know, I've had the opportunity to speak at a couple of women's conferences for the first time in 2 years. In the last couple of months, you invited me to this. I'm recording a podcast for some national podcast thing next week. And I've written a couple of articles for a couple of different things. And it's like, oh, it's like the whispers of and back. I think, yeah.
And does it feel different this time from when you spoke in the different season to speaking now after going? Yeah.
And if there isn't 1,000,000%, it's 1,000,000%. And I had one of the conferences was a conference I'd spoken at 6 or 7 years ago. And the lady, not only the lady who ran the conference, but attendees who had been at the conference were just like, we knew it was you when we heard your voice or we hear the glimpse of your story that you start with, but you are not the same.
Wow.
And I'm like, I would hope not, for the journey that it's been and the wrestles that it's been, and knowing that he always wins every wrestle and I just have to learn to let go quicker. But ultimately, I'm not the same. You know, I don't even think I write the same. Like, it's still me. You know, but it's like when I became a Christian and, you know, like years later, people are like, you are still the same. Like people that I bump into from my past life, you know, my old life of messed up drugs and all of that kind of lifestyle. And they'd be like, you're still the same. And I was like, he's transforming my character, not so much my personality.
Yeah.
You know? Like I was always sassy. I would always, you know, have a comment about something to someone, you know, and for me, it's the same. It's like, it's still me, but it's a completely different dimension of my voice.
And it sounds like you have this deeper understanding of the kindness of God and the love of the Father's love, and also like loving yourself.
Yeah. And I think that receiving, when you're in a season where you literally can't move off the couch and your kid has to drive you, which was the first 4 months, and you're still, and you're wrestling, but you're still learning to understand that I have always been a giver of the goodness of God to other people. And I still am, hopefully, but then I needed to learn to receive. And I wasn't not giving from an overflow, but the overflow was
that much.
You know, and there was days I was running on less than 0. And it wasn't his heart for me.
Yeah.
It's not his heart for my family. It's not his heart for my calling. And realizing over the time, you know, seasons change, but purpose doesn't. And so ultimately, my purpose is the same. It's to express the goodness of God. It's to tell stories of the goodness of God and draw other people into his presence for themselves.
Yeah.
And the season has wildly changed. Yeah.
Very much so. What encouragement would you share with someone who is sitting in front of you and just saying, I've just quit my job, or I've stopped doing this because God's told me to stop and I'm scared. What would you say to them?
First line is, now is not forever. No matter what season you're in. no matter whether it's not you made the decision yesterday or the decision was made for you or you felt pressured into that decision. Now is not forever. I believe that all of the people that I've met and that I'm meeting in the kingdom and the world, I feel like part of this call on my life is to encourage people to embrace their unbecoming. So many people think that they need to be whatever it is that people think they need to be. And we don't.
Yeah.
We don't. And so now is not forever is my big one. Again, that line, you know, the line is not just a line for me. They never are. You know, there's heart to my content and there's journey to the content. And when I say seasons change, purpose doesn't, I mean it. And I don't just mean it for me. I mean it for every person whose path I'll ever cross. Yeah.
Oh, Bronwen, I have been challenged myself just talking with you. And it's interesting, hey, because God's just said after the last retreat this year, he said, and then for 6 months, you will not plan anything and watch what I will do with it. And so I'm getting really excited for that. It was uncomfortable to make that decision and go, okay, Lord, but yeah, I've handed him that 6 months and I'm not planning a thing, and it'll be me and him hanging out and me being present with my children and just whatever it is, and my husband, and you know, yeah, so I'm getting excited.
And remember those, you know, what are you doing someone else could be doing? What are you not doing only you can do?
That's good.
You know, you'll learn the art of being overdoing, my friend, and it's going to be a magnificent season for you to be in and to come through.
Thank you. My friend, how can people just connect with you and even get hold of your books or what, you know, how can they find you?
So the easiest way, come find me on Instagram, Bronwen Healy, just good old Bronwen Healy. And I did start a page that I feel like God's wanting to reemerge, which is called Love Bronwen. So my name is spelled Bronwen, so Love Bronwen. My books are all out of print at the moment, but that's another thing that, there's a restirring. I kind of thought, you know, Trophy of Grace came out in 2004. It's my life testimony. It's my story. It's my, you know, kind of blah, blah, blah. And the amount of people that in the last 6 months have been like, so how can I get a copy of your book? How can I get 10 copies of your book? Because for someone else, it's always going to be a story of fresh hope.
Yeah.
And to other people that have never read it or never heard it on audio, it's always going to be a fresh story of hope. It's like, you know, I used to be a messed up drug addicted prostitute. I met and fell in love with Jesus and he radically transformed my life.
Yes, that is a big story.
It doesn't get old, right? And now it's been 22 years. But to somebody else, that story's got the power to lead them to Jesus for themselves.
Yeah.
And so there's that book. And then years ago, 2008, gosh, I feel old. 13 years ago, I wrote a book called I Have Issues, Don't You?
I love that one.
That book, at some stage, will become a study guide. And I think that I'll probably do some video kind of interactive stuff with that, because when I wrote that 13 years ago, it was before Brené Brown made vulnerability the thing. And it would have taken those 1,000 people that I made the 1,000 copies for originally. What a brave and courageous human goes into Kurong or somewhere and picks up a book that says, I have issues, don't you? And reads it and lets God help them understand the power of surrender. So I think that book's, I believe, not I think, that book's coming back in a new dimension too. So, yeah.
Well, I'm excited for your now, and I'm excited for what's to come as well, Bronwen. And thank you for your time, beautiful friend.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on Brave with Lisa. I hope that it has inspired or impacted you in a small or large way. Feel free to comment, to subscribe, and share with some friends. And please join us next week on another conversation we will have here on this channel on Brave with Lisa.